and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we start with public participation and recognition, and we're going to start out with the middle school wrestling team. So if they want to come in from the hallway. All the way up. You guys want to get a quick picture while we have it standing here, or you can stand up if you want to and take.
Bunch up, guys, for a picture.
Thank you. All right, so we start with the recognition of the middle school wrestling team. The DeKalb Middle School wrestling team finished their season this past weekend. They brought 14 wrestlers to the state tournament, which was the most in the AA state history for this year. The grapplers ended the day on Saturday with 8 total places, 2 in the finals, and a 4th place finish in the state. This finishes a run for the 8th graders that had been placing in state all 3 years. So at 65 pounds, we have Eduardo Castro. He finished in 6th. 75-pound Hudson Eichen, 2nd place. 80 pounds Jalen Earhart, 6th place. And 85 pounds Ethan Schultz, 4th place. 85 pounds Matthew Clayton, 6th place. 90 pounds Caden Caparod, 2nd place. 95 pounds Danny Androd, 3rd place. 100 pounds Austin Martin, state qualifier. 105 Jacob Luce, 3rd place. 105 Josh Klum, state qualifier. 119 Gerard Griffin, state qualifier. 155 Aiden Sessions, state qualifier. Josiah Antamad, state qualifier. And 185 pounds Roman Pfeiffer, state qualifier. So congratulations.
Just as a program, these guys actually, we have, this would be combined schools with Rosette and Huntley. When we combine back our dual record, we have over 900 victories as a program. So there's a lot of pride, a lot of tradition, and a lot of good wrestling here. You guys saw the good wrestling from the high school this year. So we're sending them up some more good kids and keep it rolling.
And I love
And St. Mary's, I forgot. My one St. Mary.
Congratulations. Guys.
Thanks, guys. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You guys. Thank you, Coach. Thank you, guys. Yeah, congratulations.
Appreciate it.
It did happen once. That's what happened. But I told them not to do
hope you can have the middle school and high school musicals. Okay. Here's some certificates also here, so. Okay, so next we have recognition of Clinton Rosette and DeKalb High School choir students. 4 Clinton Rosette Middle School and 8 DeKalb High School choir students were selected to participate in the 2019 American Choral Directors Association 60th Anniversary Jubilee National Conference in Kansas City, Missouri, February 27th through March 3rd. over 4,200 students from 7 geographic regions divisions had addition this year for the honor. Our students were selected through their individual auditions they submitted this past September. District 428 students selected to the ACDA National Conference: Nevaeh Castanda, Scruton Rosette, Isaiah Marquez, Grace Leopardo, Hannah Squires, Genevieve DeVille from the high school, Lamine Decker from DHS, Daniel Daylap from DHS, Maria Holloway Racine DHS, Jane Leopardo DHS, Jacob McGraw DHS, Keegan Moore DHS, and Isaiah Pankey DHS. So, congratulations. Travis, would you like to say anything?
The students are selected, like it says, through audition, and I think this is every year that we've done this, we've had the most students from the state of Illinois selected to the National Honor Card to be open. So we're very proud of that, and we really appreciate all the support from the community, board, and all of our staff, and everybody. So thank you very much for the work on all that. I think it's a really extraordinary experience that they have. Really extraordinary.
So once in a lifetime experience, and it couldn't be possible without the support community and parents and schools. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks for representing us. Great job as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great, you guys. Thank you. It was cool learning about you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, thanks so much for all your work. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 2 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not in order. Any comments? We have Linda Kerr, substitute teacher, bonus plus lesson plans for teachers.
Should I stand?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, this is regarding sub-pay. I've talked to Mr. Craven a couple times this last year, once in person. I thank you for meeting with me and listening. I've been subbing for 24 years, and I see you have a proposal that you're going to be talking about tonight with a bonus pay for subs. That Mrs. Sarah Abate, how do you say her name? That she put, okay, so and I'm really thankful for that. Our pay used to be $100 a day, and then it went down a number of years ago, down to 85, then up to 95. I appreciate the effort put into this and the fact that hopefully you guys will pass that, the bonus, but I still feel that the base pay should be raised to $100 a day. I think the extra digit makes a difference. I think when you see the 100 instead of 95, I think that's going to attract more people. There might be someone that has the attitude, well, I'm not working for under $100 a day. I don't know, I just think it looks better and you're going to get more, you're going to attract more people to sub. Let's see, I hope you consider this change in lieu of the bonuses you propose, or in addition to, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. As I look at the comparison with other local districts, I think this $100 a day is totally reasonable, especially considering the large class sizes at DeKalb, especially for myself at the high school, and some of the other challenges we face, which are unique to DeKalb. Okay, another little side thing here is I would like to suggest that though there is a substitute teacher handbook, I'm not sure if they're still using the one that I wrote in 2010, but I don't think it is, because I don't think it addresses the lesson plans that the teachers need to provide to the subs. There's a lot of subs every day at the high school, and there's room for improvement as far as preparing sub-plans for the teacher. They need to be concise so someone can come in subbing for the first time, like many people do, and they can be able to carry it out and follow it. And I would like to either talk to teachers at the beginning of the year for maybe 5 minutes and talk to them about creating a very usable, friendly plan for teachers for subs to follow. Let's see. Yeah, okay, it bothers me, but before I close, no more lost learning days. When I see that, it really bothers me because there are so many days when you've got subs and we can do more than show movies and pass out tests. So if we get some more communication going between the teachers and the subs and what we can do as far as lesson plans, we won't have those lost learning days. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, we have board committee reports and correspondence. We're going to talk in the next one or two down the list on FFAC, so we'll save that for that time. Anybody else? Next, we have possible expulsion of student number 031919A. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the expulsion of student number 031919A for the remainder of the 2018-2019 school year and the 2019-2020 school year. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jeff Allen,
Yes.
Mary Millette,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next, we have presentations. We're starting with a review of resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $28 million general obligation refunding school bonds, Series 2019, for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the district, providing for the levy of a district annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the execution of a bond purchase agreement with Raymond James and Associates, Inc. in connection with the proposed sale of the said bonds. Cindy Carpenter?
That's a mouthful.
Sorry.
A lot of technical stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is a discussion.
Yeah, this is informational at this meeting, and we have Tom Chapman, Paula Armando, and Shelby McQuaid. Paula and Tom are from Raymond James. Elizabeth couldn't be here. She usually does this first. She's out of town. And then we also have Shelby McQuaid from Ellers, who is our municipal financial advisor. So they're here at our February 15th meeting for FFAC as well as March 13th. We went through some various options for bond restructuring. We've been going through this process for the last few years with our bonds becoming callable now. And we refined some of those options at our last FFAC meeting, so they're here to present those to the board. Thank you, and here's the clicker. Thank you. There we go.
I'll stick over here, so you guys can all see me here, if that's okay. So tonight, we're gonna go through three sections of the presentation. First, give you a real quick market update on what municipal interest rates, what's going on in that particular market. We'll go over what your current situation is, your current outstanding debt, and how that lays out. And then I'll turn it over to Paula to talk about the debt restructuring plans that the FFAC has been considering and what they're zeroing in on. So as you can see on the chart here, municipal interest rates, as we get towards the back of the page, are starting to slowly come down again. We have, since November, seen probably close to 0.5% or 50 basis points drop in interest rates since that point in time. And the bulk of the reason for that is the Federal Reserve has shown or given signs that it probably will not increase rates any further in 2019, and there's even a chance that they possibly could decrease in the fourth quarter. So that's given a kind of a comfort level in terms of the market, in terms of fixed income interest rates, in particular municipals. On the municipal front, two things have really driven those rates down as well. Is the fact that the new issuance market has been down about 2 to 3 billion weekly on average compared to an average weekly. We usually issue somewhere around 5 to 8 billion on a weekly basis, and we're down in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 billion. So there's a lack of supply, but there's still a lot of money coming into municipal bond funds. We've had several consecutive weeks of money flowing in, so there's an interest in municipal bonds, and that's what's been driving down the interest rates. So let's review quickly what your current situation is, and I'm sure some of you, or all of you, may have seen where your debt structure particularly stands. If you recall, when we started putting referendum bonds in place, starting in '08, we wanted to make sure that we began with maybe a lower level of principal and interest payments because of the economy. Back in '08, as you all know, we were certainly stressed from an economic standpoint, so we wanted to make sure that we eased into the principal and interest impact to the taxpayers, and plus give you flexibility to do future restructurings as the economy starts to recover. So certainly we are in that period of time where we're a little bit better from an economic standpoint. And the way you were able to develop such flexibility is, if you can see the gray boxes there, that depicts all of the bonds that are callable ahead of the actual maturity date. So that gives you flexibility to restructure at a lower cost. So your approximate 96 million of debt outstanding, 84 million of it is callable, over 87%. So that really gives you a lot of flexibility as the committee and the financing team has been looking at the restructuring options that you'll see tonight. This page just gives you a depiction of a summary of since 1997 and the issuances of the district's debt. You had your 2097, the 97 referendum, $12 million. So 97, 98, and 2004, the death certificates, and the all have been retired. So from 97 to 2007, those debts have been retired. Starting in 2008, when the referendum was passed, we started layering that debt in. You can see that we still have some bonds outstanding in '09 and '10 issue. The '08 issue was refunded in 2016 and 17 and 18. So that's the reason why you see no amount outstanding on those particular bonds. And then 2011 was a private placement as part of the 2008 referendum. And now you can see the 2016, 17, and 18 refunding bonds that pretty much took care of the 2008 referendum bonds. The next slide depicts the district's debt limit. And as you probably know, that the district's debt limit is limited to 13.8% of the district's total equalized assessed value. So you can see, starting on the second column, the actual EAV year, 2017 to 2035, the outstanding principal of the debt as each payment takes place, and then EAV there, starting with the known EAV for 2018. And you can see, as we're estimating a growth rate of 1.5% in the reassessment rates, and $2.5 million of new growth each year are built into those EAV assumptions, and also includes the current TIP values that the district is included in. So you can see the running actual EAV assumptions and the actual EAV amount that goes down in the second column of the numbers. So then you multiply that by 13.8, and you can see where your total debt limit is, subtracting out then your outstanding debt as that decreases each year as you're paying debt off, and you can see where you're out 9 years, 8 years, your debt limit goes up to 96 million, and then certainly out to 141 million once your total debt is paid off. Okay. Now the refunding options that you'll be looking at will have a minor impact on the actual debt limit. You'll have a little bit of a reduction of your debt limit because we're going to look at smoothing out the actual debt service payments, which require you to extend the existing debt out a little bit longer. The next slide shows the actual debt service, the principal and interest payments, and the corresponding tax rates, pre-refunding the 2009 and 2010 bonds, which the FFAC has been studying over the last several years, and have ironed out a couple options, as you see tonight. We all begin, of course, with the equalized assessed value column. That includes the current tip values, and again, an annual increase of 2.5% of new money or new growth, and a 1.5% increase in the current assessments through levy year 23, and a 1% after that. I want to highlight in 2019 and 2022, we have asterisks there, and you see some larger jumps in the equalized value. That's because the city's tips come off at close point in time, and you'll see the increase in the actual equalized value. So the third column is the actual value that we will compute the tax rate against, and then the actual tax levies. As you can see, starting actually in 2019 and certainly 2020, is where we have a little bit of a bubble in your debt service. And that's again, you restructured the original bond with lower debt service to help the taxpayers with their with the economic picture and their actual tax burden. And the plans that we'll look at tonight are actually going to flatten those out and ease in the increases to the taxpayer. In 2018 levy year, the board made a decision to actually abate from funds on hand of $1,750,000, which then had a corresponding tax rate of 51 cents, and for a homeowner of 150,000 home, paid a tax of $234 for the debt service. And then you can see the corresponding increases if this debt was left alone. Okay. The next chart just depicts that in terms of a bar chart, which is kind of easier to understand than a bunch of numbers on a page. The blue bars are the actual principal and interest payments. As you can see, they are growing. And then the actual tax rate that corresponds with that. Okay. Any questions on your current picture before we look at the two different restructuring options that we're boiled down to? I'll turn it over to Paula. Oh,
So just to sort of set the stage on what the FFAC has been considering as part of their options in flattening out that debt tax rate. In addition to this, to the restructuring and just the saving of dollars and ultimately the lowering of the tax impact, the board and the FFAC has taken actions like abatements to lower the tax impact on the taxpayers. So there's that option to continue that, and you can also use money to buy down the debt, which has an additional impact to the taxpayers. So, so last year in 2018, the board abated $1.75 million, which helped to lower the tax impact, and you'll see in a couple of slides the impact of that. Step 2 is expiring, and the district will have some additional funds to use as part of this whole restructuring plan. Of the 3.5 that will be paid out of TIF 2, about $3 million can be used to pay off the debt at the call date in July 1 of 2019. So this sort of restructuring plan that started of the 2008 and 2010 bonds last year, and the abatement continues on this year with the call date of 2019 for the 2009 bonds. So the FFAC has had this discussion about the impact of an abatement, which just lowers property taxes, versus buying down the total debt on the front end, which, as you can see in that pointed out in the third bullet there. So if you use the $3 million to pay down the debt instead of, or buy down the debt instead of just abating it after the fact on the debt levy, then you have the effect of saving interest on that. So it sort of has that dual effect of paying down your debt and lowering the tax impact on the back end. So included right now in the financial projections is a $2 million surplus that will go to, or $2 million in abatements, and that's continuing on for 5 years. At the last meeting, there was a review of using the $10 million instead to buy down the at the time of the refunding, at the time of the 2020 refunding, to be more specific, buy down the debt that you have as part of the refunding. So when you buy down the debt, you have the effect of lowering the tax impact by both lowering the debt and lowering the interest payments. So the $10 million will then save an additional $5.4 million in interest.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So if that's what the board chooses to do, pay the debt down early with the 3 million and the 10 million instead of doing it through abatements, that we can pay down, that we're looking at over the life of this, just over $10 million of savings over the 20 years.
So it would have the effect of lowering the debt, the principal by the 3 million and the 10 million, and then you'd save the interest on top of that. So the 1.6 and an additional 5.4 of interest. So it would have a larger effect than just the 13 million. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I saying that?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you.
I'll wait until you're done. I'll wait until you're done.
I broke a rule.
that was pretty much it.
It was an
Yeah.
important thing to wait a little for, but I'll wait until you're done.
No, go ahead.
Well, so I understand the principle, I understand the savings over the life of the bond. I mean, I understand that we're gonna be saving that money by paying it down first, then we don't have to pay the interest over that period of time. But, I don't understand the, if you will, the principal part of it. In other words, we're getting rid of that amount. We're getting rid of that amount of the bond by paying that $10 million, if we throw $10 million at it, right? I mean,
Correct.
So I understand that, but if you're making a case for the taxpayer, in other words, you're saying to the taxpayer right now, and the taxpayer right now may not be the taxpayer in 20 years. So if you're making an argument for the taxpayer right now, what would the argument be for paying it down? I mean, I understand the long-term concept of it, but what would be the argument that you'd make to the taxpayer right now for paying off that bond?
So depending on how it's structured, and Paula will go into the different restructuring plans, it has the same result it could have potentially the same result for taxpayers. And that goes into how it's being restructured, and those are the plans that Paula will walk through. So really, the argument for the taxpayer is it's no different. The end result will be the same for the taxpayer next year.
We as a board look long-term
Correct.
for 20 years.
Yeah.
We look that way, we look down the road. But I'm just saying, anybody that might be arguing for that money to be used for something else, immediate to my needs as a person who's in the school district, whatever, the argument is, this is a long-term argument. This is a board-type concept of what we're gonna do for the value, for the community over the long term. Is that correct? That's really more of what we're looking at.
Both over the long term and in the near future. I mean, you can take the money and abate all the taxes in 1 year, but that doesn't provide that taxpayer who's here this year and most likely next year any sort of continuity in their tax.
We're going to see this illustrated.
Okay, well, we're gonna see that illustrated.
So, yeah,
But
so,
I'm just talking about when people discuss this with me, the concept of what's the value for me? I don't care about 20 years down the road, what's the value for me? And I have to make that argument to them, but we'll see that.
so I think what Paula will walk through is that you can make that argument by saying we want to satisfy both.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think
I'll
another,
find that out.
yeah,
Thanks.
okay.
Here.
So just to follow through, as Cindy mentioned, we were at, or Raymond James and Ellers were at the February 13th and March 13th FAC meetings. And the committee reviewed a lot of options. So there's 1A, 1B, until 4B. So we discussed or analyzed what the effect on the taxpayer would be if we don't use the TIP payout, if we don't use it on the 2019 or use some of it in the 2020 or just 1.5 million. So we basically analyzed the options and we came through with a 3 million and then the 10 million on the 19 and then the 20 respectively. So the committee preferred the shorter payoff option, which was just to accelerate the payments until 2035 versus just stretching it out until 2038 because it's more interest savings in the long run as opposed to just stretching it out until 2038. And then we also discussed future abatements with a 2 million annual abatements that's embedded in the projections. And so the Series 2010 capital appreciation bonds basically have higher interest payments. So that just makes a lot more sense to put more money in there, the 10 million, as opposed to just a lower amount. So as opposed to the 2009 that we're currently refunding in the 2019. And then the purpose of basically the abatement option, as shall be discussed, is to ease out the tax burden to the taxpayers. So we saw on the 1,750,000 that dropped on that chart earlier. So option 1, which was the 4A presented to FFAs, was 13 million TIF operating funds to pay off bonds in 2019 and 2020 restructuring. So as you can see, 2035, for everyone, but 2035 is the last maturity payment for both bonds. So we were able to place so we can use a 3 million TIF contribution or funds on hand of the district, 3 million in 2019 and then the 10 million in 2020. So that gives us about 8.8 million of total cash flow savings and about 4.7 net present value savings. So we can see that on levy year 2018 or on tax year 2018, there's that 1,750,000 abatement, which brought down the tax rate to 0.1. And then basically the effect of adding in the 3 million in 2019 and then the 10 million in 2020 would kind of ease in that tax rate until 0.94 and then level it until 2034 and then a bit of a drop in 2035. So if I can direct you to the last two columns, the new debt payment on a 150,000 home would be 234 with a 1,750,000 abatement in 2018. And then in 2019, that would be a bit of an increase to 330. So the last column just shows what if had the district not abated that 1,750,000 in 2018, the debt payment of a 150,000 home would have been 344. So just to show you the increase or the decrease that would have happened if the district did not abate that 1,750,000. So that's the chart. So the 2018 is the sudden drop because of the abatement, and then kind of easing in with an increase and then leveling until 2035. Option 2 or B, just basically the same 2019 option, but on the 2020 we present this case where what if we just use 6 million in 2020 and use that 4 million difference to abate in 2019 until 2022. So basically, if you look at the debt service tax rate, it's still the same. That's the point we made earlier. Still the same, but the difference would be on the total debt service of the bond. So we're looking at more long-term look on both issues. So just to provide a summary, there's that 470,000 of difference, basically lower debt service on option 148 due to that 10 million or larger payout or larger contribution in the 2020. And just to take note, we use or put in 25 basis points cushion in the 2019 piece and 50 basis points cushion in the 2020. conservative interest rate.
Questions? I guess I should share with the board, as FFAC, the board wanted us to bring forward, FFAC to bring forward 4A is their choice. Don't give anything.
That's pretty much all we gathered from them, that they wanted option A. I think, other questions that were proposed too, were just looking at it, a lot of people around the circle went around, commented and said, you know, really it comes down to two things: do we pay it down now, or do we wait? And so taxpayers really have proposed, and we've heard constituents that really strongly believe that we should pay down the debt now rather than later.
When you pay down debt, you want to pay it down when there is an interest rate that debt is, that you're adding on to that debt, that is greater than the consumer price index. As soon as that reverses, you're actually losing the value of the money that is being held in the bond. And so I'd just like to check throughout all of this, are we indeed doing that? Have we looked for the condition of comparing the interest rate that the bond is paying in comparison to the CPI or proposed CPI as we move into the future? And are these all indeed higher bond interest rates as compared to CPI? Cindy, you're checking.
Yeah, they are, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes, much higher, actually.
Because you're issuing a longer term bond, CPI is more of a short term rate. And if to drill down even further, the interest rate that you're paying on the new bonds are certainly going to be greater than the interest earnings that you're earning on the money that you're going to use to evade over time. So you're earning less interest on the 10 million that you put in. If you held on to it, then the impact of reducing the amount of bonds you have to sell at a higher interest rate. Does that make sense? So you have a benefit. So for instance, if that 10 million sat there and you didn't put it in all at once, and you put it in as an abatement over time, you may be earning 2% interest income on that. But putting in that 10 million immediately on a bond issue that is a 20-year issue, that's paying closer to a 4% interest rate or 3.5%. The interest expense is greater than what you're earning on it if you kept that 10 million on hand and use it as an abatement. Thank you.
But also, where did that 10 million come from?
Gary, you can actually speak to this.
Sure, back when we got the $21 million grant from the state for the construction of the schools and so on, is after the fact, and they gave us the ability to pay that out however we chose. That had been granted before the construction. That money was allowed to be spent other ways. So there was a subcommittee from FFAC that determined that the $10 million would be set aside into the fund balance for future use. And that's where that money is coming from.
It's been there ever since, like, ever 2011.
It really, that's, sorry, and that is the community's money. We got that as a construction grant, build a new high school, and we put it in our fund balance, and it's been sitting in there, and it's community money. It was meant to support a high school, to build a high school.
Yeah, there was a great deal of discussion in the subcommittee, then after that, the full FFAC, before it brought to the board at that time, about how to spend that money. And you know, there's several people, eventually the entire subcommittee and then FFAC decided it would be wise to set aside that money rather than to use it for infrastructure repair or building another classroom here or there or those kinds of things. So now we're seeing potentially use for that money now.
And I think that's still the conversation at FFAC. I don't really think we're going to change paying it down and really utilizing it for what it is. I mean, for what it was deserved for.
I mean, we're in a position now that we can use that money and pay down the bonds, and we don't need it to sit in our fund balance and continue.
I just want to reinforce what we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes here, that it's been sitting there earning 2.2 or earning whatever it's earning.
Even less.
Well, in the beginning,
Or less, or 1.8 or whatever it is. It's been sitting earning that while we've been paying on the bond at 4 or 3.5, whatever it is. So we are not paying off a debt that we're losing, and in effect, we're losing 1.8 or whatever it is that we're losing on that money sitting there every year. So at this point, what we're saying is let's stop doing that, take care of that, and then in effect, we're getting rid of that liability of whatever the difference is between those two numbers, right?
Right. And during the, oh, I'm sorry. And during the call period is when you can pay down tax. So there's only short windows of opportunity where you can do that. You can't, for bonds, you can't just say, like a mortgage. All right, I want to, I got a little less money, I want to pay it down, and then my principal will be less interest. For bonds, you can't do that because their investors want to know, I have X amount of time where I'm going to earn those dollars.
Right.
So only during the call period is when you can actually reduce.
Short
the tax.
opportunity to do it.
Another aspect of this, I think, is that when we decided to put the money aside, our fund balance wasn't very fat at the time. Okay, it was pretty down there. We had a range of 15 to 25%. Don't remember, Cindy, do you remember where it was when we made that?
We were really close.
It was very close to the low end of our range,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, very close.
Yeah. So, and that's not the case now. In fact, just almost the opposite now. So,
So now, one of the bullet points, excuse me, but one of the bullet points in the previous slide indicated that you could replenish those funds over time in surplus. So wherever you take your money out of, I believe it's in with the cash. Over time, you can replenish that as well.
so that
You can build it back up.
So that's a great segue to my question, so thank you. I wanted to ask about the EAV assumption, so back on page 8 under debt limit.
Yeah, let's see about the out.
You've chosen, exactly, it's a long time,
It's a
right?
long
We're
ways
talking about
out.
many,
How do
many
you come up
years.
with those?
And it's telling us that, looking at the footnote, number 1 there, includes current debt values and property of 2.5 million and 1.5 reassessment for 2023 levy year, 1% thereafter. So those caveats, are they reasonable? I mean, what?
I believe they are, honestly. They used to be, actually, I'm trying to think back 10 years ago when we first started this, we were looking at, we thought we were being conservative before we even issued the bonds when we were going through the referendum because we were really growing quite a bit as a district and EAVs were coming up and we had, I think it was like 10% increases and we were seeing actually much higher, even if you look historically prior to that. So we actually had ratcheted those down. And of course, nobody anticipated what was going to happen in 2008 at the same time when we were issuing the bonds. So, is it an educated guess? To some extent, yes. I mean, we've been on higher EAV trends. I mean, on average, 3-4%. So I feel it's reasonable.
And conservative.
Yeah.
It is conservative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's changed, I think, greatly since the times that you're talking about here is that the community has changed greatly, right? We now have, for instance, 60% of free and reduced lunch population and 6,600 students. So we've gone up, 1,000 students or so over.
They're close to that over like a 10-year period,
Over
like
10 years.
700 students.
But
Yeah.
of those 1,000 students plus the earlier part, many more of those students of families that are hurting. And so when I look at EAV and the possibility of paying taxes and so on, going that far out, because this is quite a long time, I think it's going to make a big difference on whether or not we can gain back some larger fraction of population in the district, community at large, that can afford to pay higher taxes. I mean, it looks like the whole point here is to hold it level, the actual payment for 150,000 evaluation, and that's a great thing.
Good news though, Terry, these are conservative EAV numbers. If the EAVs start coming in higher, then what that is going to do is the rate will end up being lower. So if the EAV is doing better than 1 point, what do we have, 1.5?
Well, the rate remains lower if we hold our budget constant, right? If the levy stays where it is. I mean, we're limited, of course.
We're just talking about the bond. We're just talking about the bond and interest rate. If the EAV is higher, the bond and interest rate will be lower. Now, if EAV dips below the 1%,
I was thinking of overall budget. Yeah.
But even starting next year or the year after, in the near term, if that increases more than the assumption, that will flow through to the later years.
Yeah.
And then those
assumptions later to come away more conservative than they are.
Yes, I'm just curious about the fluctuation as a result of those kinds of inputs over that length of time. That's a long time.
It's tough. I mean, it is tough to do that. That's why we're trying to remain conservative.
So again, the FFAC recommended 4A to the board to move forward with. So do I have a consensus to move forward with 4A as an action item at the next board meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all the work.
Next, we have a proposal to adopt Caring School Communities program for pre-K through 5th grade classrooms for 2019-2020 school year. And this is an informational item.
Good evening. This is a program that we would like to purchase for pre-K through 5th grade. And it is called Caring School Communities. It's published by the same company as the writing program we have in elementary, and then a reading program intervention that we have by Collaborative Classroom. It's produced by a nonprofit company that's only run and supported by teachers. So I bolded that statement because that's like the big piece. We looked at other programs and came down to this program that we piloted this school year, and I'll explain that in a minute. But it's about helping our kids become caring, responsible members of the school community. And it gives teachers a plan and a layout for having those conversations with kids. It is big on building the relationships, direct teaching of social skills, creating a calm, orderly environment when you're starting your day with the class meeting, which I'll show you in a minute, and then helping the students with self-discipline. So building, the program runs with a set couple things that you do each week. And in order for us to strengthen those kids feeling like they belong to a school. So if you click on that link, it begins with a closing or a morning circle every day and then a closing.
Okay, kindergarten, we're getting ready to go to our class meeting on the bus. Everybody turn around, show ready. Let's see, I did breakout from green team.
You can go ahead. Just
remember, we're circling up, right? I did breakout from red team. We're gonna do our regular class meeting. Ready? I'm gonna count to 5. I want to see it just so nobody's getting pulled. 1, 2.
So they're problem solving, making their circle.
4. Beautiful. That's what I call a teamwork circle.
All right. Let's get ready, boys and girls.
You can start.
Let's get ready for the class meeting.
So they have a class meeting every day.
One.
When we start the year, it's the first 10 weeks, and it's a little bit lengthier, and it gets shorter as the year goes on once the kids get into this routine. And then they have a closing circle at the end of the day that lasts 1 to 2 minutes, going back over what was the thing that they talked about in the morning. They have, when you do those class meetings and some of the activities, you're pairing kids up randomly. So they're having to learn to work with each other right from the beginning of the school year. They also have a weekly class meeting that happens a lesson that happens once a week based on what the teacher and the students are saying they're struggling with. If it's playground issues or lunchroom issues or talking to one another, getting along with one another, those lessons happen once every week. And that happens throughout the year. Oh, no, don't click on that. Okay. Oh, we'll move past it. Oh, so that was just an example of them doing a lesson on teasing. So the big piece for us too was there's a weekly home connection for our second graders on up. And we had parents write in and tell those teachers that they appreciated the activity that they would bring home and they would have to do as a family. Very simple little things that they're doing. So the other piece that we really liked, the teachers and I and our team, was the direct teaching of social skills. That is something that we're finding we need to do more and more, but a lot of our teachers don't have that background on how to teach that, and this program lays it out for you, and very quickly, not a lot of planning for them.
And it goes over things like, beginning of the year, we talk about what it should look like in the classroom. How do we treat a substitute teacher or guest teacher in our classroom? All those expectations are reviewed in that morning meeting that they make in the classroom. Self-management skills, helping kids work on that. Interpersonal skills, including one another, sharing with each other, and then executive function skills. I went and observed a lesson taught in a 5th grade classroom, and it was about including everybody out on the recess. And it was a pretty serious conversation they ended up getting into and sharing. And then I checked back 2 weeks later with the teacher, and she said that she's had to refer back to it, but it really helped when kids were able to share their feelings of being left out. Okay, you go to the next one. So these were just some of our classrooms that we piloted in 23 classrooms in pre-K through 5th grade this year. I couldn't have all the teachers come, so I had some pictures that some of them shared when they were doing their activities. They do set class norms in the beginning of the year of how these meetings will run and what this will look like. And if you get a chance, when you go to the bottom of this slide, the pilot teacher feedback is really neat. What the teacher said, if you want to click on that for a second, sure. We also interviewed kids, what they thought of this program this school year. Scroll down just a little bit. Keep going. Yeah, right there. This was a 3rd grade classroom. I like that I got to know a lot of the students at the start of the year. I love morning meeting because we start the day fresh. I like to learn about my classmates. I like morning meetings because everyone gets greeted. There's a particular greeting you do that changes all the time. I like the afternoon because we get to say goodbye to each other. So it just kind of created that sense of belonging. We brought the trainer in, and she modeled a lesson in like October, November. And we went into classroom, she taught the lesson, and we got to debrief with half the team, and then we did it again in the afternoon. And one of the things that was constant through everybody was the fact that the kids knew each other so much quicker than they have in the past years. Some of the teachers piloting have 20 or more years of teaching experience, and they have said this has made a difference, and if we don't adopt it, they still have the sample, they're going forward, because it made such a difference in how their day has run. And the kids would complain if they started going, they're like, when's our morning meeting? So they look forward to that part of the day. So you can go to the next one. It is a pretty cheap program. I mean, $19,000 is a lot of money, but for a program that will cover pre-K through 5th grade in every single classroom, that's a really reasonable cost. They get a teacher's manual. It's very simply written. It's very nice for a teacher to look at, not a lot of planning, and they also get it digitally, so they can look at it digitally at home as well. There are some trade book read alouds that they share with the kids. There is a discipline component, which we would not implement year 1. We would hold off and look at that piece for year 2. And then, there's also a cross-age buddies aspect. I think that starts in week 15, that you buddy up with another grade level that's significantly different than yours. So if it's 2nd, you might be with 5th. And you do that pairing every week with activities. So I thought I had the total number of sets that would be. So that's probably like 157 classrooms that would have those materials. So,
and I just wanted to add on that this piece is tier 1. So when we talk about the multi-tiered systems of support and how we're responding to student needs, this is tier 1. So all students at the elementary pre-K through 5th grade would be getting this program, and it is part of our social emotional plan.
What do we get when we pay $19,000? We get a booklet for all the teachers?
Yeah, it's like a bucket, and it has the 2 teachers' manuals. It has some of the materials. It has the books that they will read aloud to the kids, and then it has the digital access. And it doesn't have an expiration, like your digital access will only be 5 years. It's not that at all. Once you purchase the program, you have it for as long as you need it. The digital access is more for the teacher. There's videos for you to watch how they run their meetings so that you can model the same thing for your kids. So it's more support that way. And the printout things you can print for parents and
additional on-site training.
Yes, because I don't have training in this proposal because I already paid for training and didn't use it for my writing program. So they're just going to transfer if I buy this over to this. So I've already paid for the training. But they will come in and they'll train for a half day. when school gets out this year. And then they will come back, probably like we did October again, where they can go and observe the trainer doing the next set. Because the beginning of the year, we really focused on the morning meetings. Then the second part of the October on, we really focus on that one meeting a week about working on some of the social skills. So she'll model that and the teachers can debrief again. And that's really important because we had some things pop up and we could all share how they problem solve that.
And we can cross-train because we already have some staff that went through the pilot that's been trained.
Yep.
Question for you. What, how does this go with PBIS? Are they similar or
Yes.
can this replace PBIS?
It wouldn't replace it, but with PBIS, we do cool tool lessons each week. And what the teachers were sharing with to me was that the tool tools that the building had planned were very similar to what they were covering in this program. So we will sit down if we adopt it and make it so that they're not having to do both. The activity that gets chosen once a week, maybe that would follow the cool tool thought for the building, because that cool tool focuses on what that building needs to work on. And I don't want to take that part away from it, but these lessons also cover many of the same things. So we need to marry them. I don't want them to feel like they're doing two different things. But this doesn't have the ticket system in that part. This is really just about that lesson. So.
Yeah, the discipline component that you said might be instituted second year. Why not do it sooner?
We need time to dig into that piece. It's a brand new part they added. When we first looked at the program, that wasn't a part of it, but this is a new addition that came up. So we need to look at that, see what it's like, see if we can use some of the components of it. We just haven't had the opportunity to do that. And we might, but as we get into it more.
Have other districts tried it yet, you know?
That I don't know. I mean, Caring School Communities, yes, but I don't know about the discipline part. I'm checking it out.
So it's 13.
Well, Caring School Communities has been around for a long time.
No, I mean the discipline part.
The discipline, yes, that's a new
It
component.
hasn't been field tested.
Right, they just added that, so we want some time to see what that looks like.
And is there an additional cost for that, or is that part of it?
Which is part of it. And it also comes, each principal gets their own packet and bucket of different things too, to be, so I forgot to mention that. That just comes free with the program.
Victoria, your question about whether it replaces PBIS, I mean, to me, you want to find out whether it's more effective than PBIS. If you're going to marry it, merge it, replace it, whatever, I think you clearly want to know how it performs.
It won't replace it, but I think it will help on the part where we teach explicitly during PBIS. This will help them teach that explicit piece of PBIS. That part, right now, we create that on our own and we get resources for that. This will do that part for them. So it's just a component of PBIS.
So the only, I'm making an assumption, but I want to clear up the assumption. This melds into the daily program. It's not a matter of layering extra responsibilities onto a daily program.
No.
I mean, does it?
How
does it fit into a teacher's program as far as adding extra things to do?
Right. It'll be pretty heavy starting this program at the beginning of the year, but that's okay because the beginning of the year unit we teach for 4 to 6 weeks in elementary is community and setting up your classroom, and we're doing our assessments. We're not in our huge routine, so that'll be okay. But as we go on, we're going to have to problem solve how you include this. Our hope, and it happened to many of the pilot classrooms, is they're spending a lot of time right now debriefing about these things throughout the day. Instead, if we have a set way that you do this and a set idea, and you have actual lessons, that should cut down on some of that behavior and some of those problem solving things that you're having to stop your teaching and keep going over. We're hoping that cuts down on that. So we are going to have to look at how we can blend some other things to have this time.
Or make them merge into this so that we don't have lots of different layers that.
Right. And all the pilot teachers did it different. So we plan to share out with the teachers. This is how this third grade teacher did it, but this is how this kindergarten teacher did it. Because everybody had a different way of how they included it, and I think it's important for them to hear those different ways.
Any other questions? Okay, do we want to bring back the Caring School Communities program as an action item at the next board meeting? Is this for consensus?
Yes.
Now you're good. Next, we have a materials proposal for the World Languages Department. This is a information item.
Good evening. I'm before you this evening with two members of our World Languages Department, Dr. Gail Happert, who recently just defended her dissertation, and Ms. Natalia Zimmerman. And we come before you tonight to present our World Languages Materials proposal. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the process that we went through to arrive where we are tonight, and then both Gail and Natalia are going to describe for you what the materials contain. So to begin with, the World Languages Department has not had any new materials since 2006. Their existing curriculum was aligned to the old Illinois Learning Standards. So obviously, a lot of time has passed, and they were in desperate need, not just updating materials, but realigning the whole curriculum to a whole different new set of standards. So we began the process way back in July of 2018, where they began to realign their existing curriculum to the far more rigorous ACTFL standards. And I put the link in there for you so you can go to the website. Would you like to, I mean, we could speak, I don't want to speak at great length about these standards because I'm trying to pay attention to the time. But in the world of educating students with world languages, there was definitely a need for upping the rigor, not just only in terms of reading, but in speaking language, as well as really delving deep into the cultures of these languages. And when you take a look at the ACTFL standards, they really reflect that. And all the new upcoming materials are aligned to these standards, recognizing that if we want to develop truly a world community that can communicate with each other, we have to operate under those standards. So they worked really hard last summer into the fall of just going through their curriculum and making some major changes and shifts within their curriculum. And it was through that process they developed a standards-based rubric then to use as they started reviewing different publishers and materials. You've heard us come before you in the past where we used that Common Core state standard rubric to vet out materials that are aligned to Common Core. Well, there is no such rubric in the world languages world. So we developed our own based upon the ACTFL standards. And I have to say, they did a phenomenal job, but it represented a lot of work. Also be aware that this process included both French and Spanish, and the middle school and high school Spanish and high school French. So there was a lot of involvement, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of work. So in the fall, the team reviewed several sets of materials using the new rubric they had created. They narrowed those sets of materials down to 3 publishers, and then they invited 3 publishers in January to present. And then based upon those presentations, along with all the earlier work that they did evaluating materials, here are the results. So for middle school, Spanish, which is grades 7 and 8, high school Spanish, Spanish 1, 2, and 3, and high school French 1, 2, 3, and 4. We are going with EMC Publishing Company for both Kay Chevrolet, and then I won't even try to say the French. Thank you. Both, their newest edition is 2020. And Gail and Natalia are going to share some specifics in terms as to why the department selected these materials. And they've also brought samples.
Well, I'll speak quickly to the Spanish. So just in a brief summary, the ACTFL standards, what makes them different than the old standards as well. The old standards really had grammar as the end focus, as the end result, let's say grammar. The new ACTFL standards about communication, about speaking and writing and reading. And then that was what drives the standard with grammar to support that. So there still is grammar, but the grammar is focused on helping students learn how to communicate effectively. And so in this series, we have so many communicative activities in speaking and writing that is very rich with that. And we talked with other school districts that have different programs and consistently also in this districts that use this program said their students are so, their level of speaking and their level of using reading and writing to communicate has gotten much higher. And so this is, that and what we saw in the activities, the meaningful activities that students that have a purpose. So we felt that this would really this fit our rubric well.
Okay, well, in the whole United States, when we see and we talk about the process, there is not that many French programs to choose from. There are 5 of them, and I work with 4 of them. And this is the newest one. So to say we're in a unique position, and I think our district it's so impressive that we're looking at the whole program, because this is what it is. Foreign language, we're not picking and choose this in this book. We're choosing the program which would ensure the continuity, the levels which would ensure the complexity of the language, and I would say the world that we are opening to the students in whole global concept. And this is the new concept. In fact, this company piloted with Tête Blanchet, and then it was so successful and had such a great response from the students and teachers that they sort of created the Spanish program. What's excellent about that, then it gives you a variety of tools, and it gives you the variety of means to achieve the goal based on what is the need. They need the students, and we are in a unique position. We teach how to listen, read, write, and understand. So all that, and it has the good combination of the individual activities, that it has a classroom activity. The student can listen on their own just by touching the part of the text. They can go and review as many times as they want. Those activities, they stimulate the productive speech in class. They give you the variety, the cultural readings, not just the reading, but the part of the program that the student will learn and take over to the discussion. I mean, this is an excellent tool which has so many options, and I could be talking, as you could imagine, like hours, but I have to limit myself. Just briefly, this is the best on the market so far, and thank you so much for considering that, because this is the best that we could do and give our students with the growing interest for the foreign languages, and giving them the option to be so marketable in this world, and being that actually unique. Thank you very much. That was really fast one.
You're used to having 50 minutes, right?
48.
So in the interest of time, I included in your board packet the materials adoption, which gives them a lot more detail about the materials themselves. I also prepared for you tonight to do a proposal like this is kind of complicated, as you can imagine. So rather than give you the breakdown of the cost proposal, because it's got some kind of quirky codes, what I did for you, and you take one and pass it around. What I did for you so that you can see what you get with this price tag, I put a chart here that describes, you'll see across the top, the levels that we're purchasing, the number of books, classroom sets, because when we purchase new materials, and this has a whole digital component to it, that primarily is the delivery of the materials is through the digital platform, but we are also buying classroom sets of books. And then for 1 year only, this first year, we are proposing to buy class workbooks. And the rationale behind that is the World Languages Department has been using the same materials for a really, really long time. And this is going to be not only a technology shift, but it's a pedagogical shift, because the focus of the delivery is on these new ACTFL standards. And so as a support to the World Languages Department, as they adapt to all the tools that are going to be available to them on a digital platform that they've never had before, along with those pedagogical shifts, for the first year only, that we are purchasing workbooks, but just 1 year only, and the publisher gave us a 50% discount as a way to support and make this transition to more digital delivery along with the shift in instruction. Also, you'll note that all the professional development, and it's pretty unlimited. That's one of the things that EMC really takes pride in. It's a smaller company, but its focus is on literacy. When I was in the classroom as an ELA teacher, I loved their materials because they were always high quality, very focused on the student and developing deep love of literacy. So we have unlimited professional development with them in this next year of implementation. and that is being given to us as gratis. And then all of the teacher manuals, which if I were to show you this cost proposal, believe it or not, those are very expensive, and they are giving those gratis to us as well. So you can see on this sheet, I mean, I put the total up there on the slide, but I gave you a brief breakdown of what this will cost. The cost does not include Spanish 4 or AP Spanish. That we're going to bring forward to you at the April meeting, because Spanish 4 and AP Spanish has some very unique needs that we found through reviewing the publishing companies just wasn't meeting. So not only did they review all of this, then our Spanish 4 AP and our AP Spanish went the extra mile and reviewed additional materials to make sure that they were finding the right fit.
Quick question. You said because this is on a digital platform that there's places throughout where you can hover and click and then you get the audio feeds. As opposed to being in a listening lab or that students can work, not completely at their own pace, but it's almost like having a listening lab built right in because it's on a digital platform. Is that accurate or overstated?
Well, that's, I think, precisely correct. The students could do it at home as well, which is entirely different, that, you know, they don't have to wait for their day in the lab. We only have one lab, so also all classes could be doing this every day, as opposed to signing each other lab.
In a way, it's supplement actually, because in the lab, you could do actually the pair activities. It's a nice way to add the resources for the individual work. It does not completely replace the lab, but it does give you the other option. This is another dimension that we're talking about, which is lovely.
I'd just like to ask why these languages inherently make up a world languages curriculum when the world consists of Asia and there are no Asian languages included within this. It consists of Africa, there's no African languages included. There's languages that derived thousands of years ago from Latin. That's what we have as a world. Like, the world's a bigger place. Can we change the name of the group or something? Call it European languages or something?
Not Africa speaks French.
Is that a
Can I answer this one? We cannot say that French is a European language, because in some way the French is unique because it's spoken on every single continent. Right now we could say it's an African language much more than European, because the African, by the way, the country which are using French right now in Africa, French-speaking Africa, they're going to bring, and it was calculated in maybe 20, 30 years, French would be one of the most spoken languages in the world because of a growing need in the African continent. You look at the map, everywhere that you see, you have French in Asia, you have in Africa, you have Northern America, you have Latin America, everywhere. So we are global society with the global languages. And if the board decides that we need to expand our learning to the other languages, we are world language, we're ready.
Also,
I have a quick question.
but the department also has the world language is a new title for us. We're foreign language, but the department also includes English as an additional language. And so that is one of the rationale for calling it world languages, because English is not, you know, we call that a foreign language. And Spanish is not necessarily a foreign language. French is not necessarily a foreign language for many of our students. But I agree, if the board at some point wants to include other languages, we would be too happy.
Thank you.
Hold on, I gotta say something.
Hold on a second. I
All right,
yeah, this seems awfully dense. Does this go through different levels? Are you taking this particular book? Does it do French 1, or in this case, this one, French 1, French 2, French 3? I mean, we're doing all the way through on this particular book. They carry this.
Not one book. You have, this is like only one little tiny book. I couldn't bring you all the materials from 4 levels.
You get through, I teach. You get through this in a year?
No, we're not getting through. It depends how we are learning.
Oh, okay. So you go through and you selectively choose within this thing of the different parts of this?
Correct.
Okay.
It depends. So it's just like not we have to run and just because we have to cover. We're not covering. It depends on what the students are learning. Every single class is different. It just, I cannot stop where it is, because it just depends how they run it.
I get you this far, maybe in my class, and I teach college. Thanks.
This is a bigger view, and I know that you're giving us a discrete thing here, but I agree with Howard. You took half my words when you said what you did. World languages, forget it, get a new name. Because, okay, and I'm not being, but really, it doesn't represent the world. And you think about French, I was in Niger, Niger, Africa, and worked there. That's the business language, but then there's Hausa, Fulani, a whole bunch of other native languages. So So he's right about Asia to some degree, but guess what? It's not just Asia. India will surpass China in population in the next decade. And guess how many languages there are in India?
So
let's teach them all.
we have a text, we have a program that we presented on at least the classes that we teach now are these materials that we want to use in our school district.
So do I have a consensus to bring back the world language department's presentation on our textbook?
Yes. Yes, for me.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next we have the non-business consent agenda.
Thanks, ladies.
That the
Here,
Board
take
of
the book.
Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through H. Do we have a motion?
So
All right.
moved, second.
Okay.
Well,
Discussion?
Did you vote?
Jeff, I'll be second.
We're in a
I'm
tie.
not gonna
Okay,
argue.
discussion? All right, roll call please.
Jeff Algren,
Yes.
Terry Millet,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Saltman.
Yes.
Okay, next we have the business consent agenda. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through G. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call please.
Terry Millet,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Saltman,
Yes.
Jeff Algren.
Yes.
Okay, next we have business and finance. This is a request to bid utilities to natural gas and electric. That the Board of Education approve the request to bid utilities for natural gas and electric. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Third second?
Okay.
Discussion? Okay. Roll call please.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Saltman,
Yes.
Jeff Algren,
Yes.
Terry Millet,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes. Okay, next we have the results of the invitation to bid for pupil transportation services. This is an action item. That the Board of Education award the transportation bid to First Student for a 3-year period effective August 1st, 2019 through the end of the district's summer school program in 2022, unless earlier terminated with the option of 2 and 1-year extensions exercisable at the sole discretion of the district. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
If you can recall, back in the fall, we came to the board with approval to bid pupil transportation services. Currently, we have First Student as our vendor, and we've been with them for more than 20 years. And every 5 years in the past, we have gone out to bid for these services, so we felt it was prudent to do that again because the contract will end at the end of this fiscal year. We actually had a 3-year contract in the past, and then we did do 2 years extensions, which is allowed per school board regulations. So the bid schedule, it was quite a long process. It's a big bid to do. Obviously, you see the numbers, and it's a very large contract. So I want to give kudos to Brenda and Mayor as well. They really helped out with this process and with the analysis of the bids as well. So we opened up the bids back on February 27th, and we did get 3 bids from 3 vendors: First Student, Durham Services, and Illinois Central. They were all required to go to a pre-bid meeting, which they did, and they submitted a lot of questions to us, which we did clarify and answer a lot of questions during that process. We basically gave them a spreadsheet where we have various different, how much in services we will need, so we can compare apples to apples for each of the vendors, because there's a lot of different areas that we analyze and look at. So I'll get down basically to the nuts and bolts. There are a lot of numbers here. What we did get with our bid results is that first student did come in with about 5.5% lower bid than what we're currently paying for our core services, which our core services are really our daily routes, our special education routes, summer school, those types of things. That's exclusive any of the charters, we call them, which would be for extracurricular trips and those types of things. Durham was the next closest bidder for our core services, which is about 4.1% lower than the previous year that we're looking at. Illinois Central was quite high. So we really right away kind of put them over to the side because they were much more expensive. So we were really looking at Durham per student. And we did focus on those core services, but that is really the most of our cost, which is about just shy of 15 million over the 3-year period. So that really is the main cost to the district. So when we looked at the overall services, and we also did reference checks, looked at other districts, what it would take to, if we did make a switch, there's a lot of components to analyzing this bid, and actually even the school, the ISBE tells us to just not look at price, look at everything. That's really almost the last thing you would look at because it's about getting the kids to back and forth safely. And after doing all the analysis, we feel that we'd like to retain first student as our pupil transportation service for the next 3 years with the option to extend for years 2 and year 1. And then also within that 3-year period, they're looking at a 2% increase from in the next 2 years after 1920. So it'd be 1920 would be the current price, which is about 5.5% lower than 2% increases for the 2 years after that. Recommendation. Questions?
Is that 2% total increase just one time?
Well, it would be, 2%.
2% per year each year?
No, it would be 2% each year. So 2% in 21, 22. Yeah, so basically 4% over 3 years, I guess you could say. Roughly, yeah. Other questions?
Cindy, do you have any idea why Illinois Central was so much higher in their bid?
No, we don't, honestly, because it's a sealed bid. So really what they do is they bring it in and we actually open them up in front of all of the vendors who are at the bid opening. We open them up, we basically let everybody know what the total was, and then that's when we start delving into the numbers. So don't really know the rationale as to why that is. Other questions? All right, roll call.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Beth Albrecht,
Yes.
Terry Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Beth Cindy Hernandez.
Yes.
Next, we have results for requests for quote to lease one-time devices. Oh, okay, sorry. This is an action item that the Board of Education accept American Capital's quote for a 3-year, $1 buyout lease for a total cost of $31,108.50. The total amount of the lease cost and cost of devices is $935,608.50. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion.
Okay. All right, so first I'll ask a question that I received by email from a community member, comparing the cost of these Chromebooks to the cost that Sycamore pays, or the cost that that person believes you can buy online for. So I think it's smart to respond to those questions.
What was the first part? Sorry.
So the first, there were 3 comparisons, the price that we're supposed to pay according to this, the information you've given us. The cost that Sycamore is supposedly paying for these, which is $360, I think you quoted that. And then the cost that they believe they can buy a Chromebook online and then put the market for $200.
Sure. We can address both of those. So Sycamore is doing a 3-year accidental damage warranty on their devices. We do a 4-year unlimited accidental warranty on our devices. So we guarantee a 4-year ROI devices. So there is the cost discrepancy there per device in order to make sure we get all 4 years out of them.
Have we seen any damage in our Chromebooks?
Yeah.
Did any damage?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know of a single district that has not seen damage, especially at the secondary level. The secondary level is where the majority of the damage happens, especially with schoolers. Less so in elementary, more so in middle school. What's your other piece?
Yeah, so, and the $200 online is a anecdotal thing, I believe, but.
Well, so if
is
you
there any
want
such possibility?
to buy a used Chromebook, you can do that, but you still have to buy the Google licensing, you still have to buy an always on case. It doesn't guarantee, there's not going to be any warranty with that. So for us, we would have to at least get probably 3 full FTE in order to support those used devices, especially 2,200 some odd devices, in order to basically be that warranty. That also doesn't include the cost of the parts you have to purchase in order to supply those used devices. And I'm not going to guarantee it for your ROI on a used device that we'd be buying from somewhere.
So the general short answer is that it's not an apples to apples comparison.
No, not even close.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
I do have another question, but not related to business or technology. I have a question relating to implementation from a curriculum and education point of view. So I went back and I looked at, having been on the FFAC when this was first being looked at, and being voted into board membership when our first approval and rollout. Well, actually, pilot came before I was on board. But anyway, I looked at all the information that I could find, right? And there's a very good package online still from the meeting. It was the February 17th of, well, let me think about here, would it be, I don't know, 16, 17. It was quite a while back. And so in order to spend $1 million, more or less, on these Chromebooks, I want to know that they've done good, that there is actually quantitative data that I can look at and say, it was, fine, but we'll spend the money tonight.
We're gonna vote.
And I probably will. So I want to raise the issue again before I vote, and this is my rationale for I probably will vote no. Not because what you presented is the way I think that it has been. From a business and technological point, I'm not sure yet, in my view, of whether we've made a dent. I mean, look at our performance in the schools today as a result, partly of the way the state, judges us as compared to what it used to do. Now, there's a whole bunch of factors involved, but I'm not convinced yet that I can prove that the Chromebook has increased the value of education and increased the education itself to the children in the district. I believe, intrinsically, that the answer is yes, it probably has, and also believe that it's a leverage tool that we use to help out where we can't hire more teachers and have more school space and so on. So I think in general, I'm all for it, but at the same time, as a fiduciary, I can't agree to spend, $1 million almost on something that I'm not I can prove is giving us a good return on investment. So that's my rationale. I just want to say that before we vote.
Okay.
Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Barry Malett,
No.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Bidney Hernandez,
Yes.
Howard Salton.
Yes.
Next, we have new business and administration, substitute employee compensation and bonus structure. This is an informational item.
Everyone, so in your board packet, sorry, in your board packet tonight, there was some information to support a proposal for changes to our current compensation subs, including a bonus structure. So I want to point out a few items that were included. To begin, when I started about a year and a half ago, some concerns that were immediately raised by administration, many which are here tonight, along with HR and Chuck and the ROE, was the same obstacle that many districts are facing across the country, which is a lack of substitute teachers, therefore low fill rates, lower than desired fill rates. So we began, talking about that in different meetings, elementary leadership specifically around the cabinet table, and how we, should address this. We started tracking data, to look at our fill rates as well, and we looked back to 2015-16, and we've included that in your packet tonight, so you can look at it month to month, the district-wide, also location to location. And what we can see is even back in 2015, we were experiencing this problem. It has increased over time, but overall, we're around 70 to 80%.
some into the 90% as far as our fill rates, but some down in the 70s even. And that causes significant hardship at the building level. So some things that we did initially or over the past year and a half were really take a hard look at how we, acclimate and onboard our subs. Previously, substitutes would enter through the Regional Office of Education, and they were great support and partner with us in that process. But what we found is, as they entered our district, they did so without any acclimation. They would show up at the building without having any conversation with administrative staff. And we really didn't know that they were a sub until they showed up. Cleared and everything appropriate, but we were missing that interaction. So we took a look at that process, and we have redeveloped the way that we onboard subs and include a step where they come here to the district office after the report approved. They're acclimated like any other employee as far as paperwork, document introductions. We also started last summer some more face-to-face opportunities in that we developed a sub handbook that was specifically geared toward substitutes. It was mentioned of a sub handbook. This is specifically for subs rather than teachers, to embrace them, give them the opportunity to ask questions, provide some, outline to what their expectations were, etc. That was very well received by our subs. I think we had about just over 50 subs attend that over the summer as an optional meeting for them. There's some other things that we have listed here that we've done, partnering with the ROE on the, newly passed short-term sub licensure. And some things that we, still need to do in the future, because although we've done these things, we're still not seeing the increase in fill rates that we would want to see. So 2 things of which are the appendices that are included for a revised pay structure, and then also a bonus structure. And the purpose of, those 2 items, one is to address the inequities that currently exist, especially between our assistant pool, our substitute assistant pool. The other is to increase the frequency in which subs are working. So when we looked, actually I just want to point out, one note before, when we look in terms of our substitute workforce, we have about 115 substitutes, which are 26 retirees, but only 14 classified substitutes to fill in for our assistants. So when we talk about fill rates in terms of certified staff or teachers, we see that at 70, 80%, sometimes into the 90s on some good months. But we're seeing it down into the teens, 20s, 30s versus average. So it's pretty significant in terms of needing improvement. Overall, for last year, this 18-19 year, we had an average of a 20% unfilled rate throughout the year. So if we flip to the second page here, we have a couple of links that provide you that data going back to 2015, but then also just this calendar year as a snapshot, so you can kind of see how we're trending month to month district-wide. At the bottom of the page, some costs associated with this that, are measurable outside of, the hardship it provides to the building in terms of shuffling staff around, strain on, building leadership to do so and so forth. There's also a dollar amount for missed planning periods. So in cases where we can't get subs, teachers are pulled from their plan to cover the classroom, and that comes at a cost as well. So we have that listed for the past 3 years. And, for that September year, I don't think we had a full year, so that's why you see, it looks significantly lower, but most recently, it was about $23,000. So when we come to the recommendation, we had a lot of conversation around what it looks like as a district and what the overall objective was. And that was to increase the days in which substitutes are coming. So how can we encourage more frequency in coming to DeKalb rather than surrounding districts? When we looked at some surrounding districts, which is on the 3rd page there, although we're not leading the market, we are competitive in our range. So we thought the best approach would be to incentivize our subs that are coming to work to come to work more. So our first recommendation, or one of our recommendations, would be to institute a bonus structure. And many districts do this, and we've been looking at all those structures. And we would like to implement a bonus for milestones achieved to give subs the opportunity after each 30-day increment to achieve a bonus. And so that's outlined on Appendix B. The other recommendation that we have would be to address the pay rates specifically for our assistants. So on Appendix A, what you have is a chart that shows current rate, hourly rate, and then full day, half day. For our non-instructional assistants and our health assistants, two positions, which are difficult to fill, and we see those low rates. They're $8.61 an hour currently. We're proposing to raise those to $9.26 to be in alignment with the substitute instructional assistant. And then that full day rate and half day rate is just, the calculation because that's how they're paid. Questions?
Yeah.
If I could just add, I know that there's been a lot of conversation around the daily rate, and we did look at that. And one thing that we have to consider when we assess whether or not to increase that rate is first the marketability, of our current structure. And we are in line with the market right now. However, I don't think we, let that fall off our radar. But one thing we have to remember and keep in mind are all of our workforces and our substitute workforce, as well as our annual employed subs, which we have to maintain differentiation. And so that was included in the prior item to address those substitutes. But also we have to consider our assistants, our DSSA staff, and their compensation structure, because many of them are qualified to be substitute teachers as well, and just make sure we're treating all those groups equally.
Yeah, have we put a number to, firstly, my reaction to that we're competitive with other school districts as far as what we pay. My reaction to that is we're not competitive in some of the issues that they face when coming here. In other words, we have discipline issues, we have some other issues that people in that particular circle of people that do that might, say, oh, there's issues, right? In other words, if we're facing it, they're going to face it. So there's that reaction to it. So being competitive is an interesting application. It's an interesting name to it, to be competitive. But have we put a number to what it would be? The point was raised tonight is to raising it to 100 for the sake of just raising it to back where it was at one point. We put a
have
number
looked
to
at
that.
I think that the key is that we have to keep in mind that we can't do this in a silo with our traditional ROE subs. So if we move to make a recommendation to raise this rate, we're going to have to go back and look at the other groups as well, to make sure we're maintaining equity. I know that, for our annual subs, for example, we just had an action item that moved their rate of pay, which was an annual increase for $885 per substitute. Now, what we would have to do is see how many days in total have been subbed and cost that out. I did run some preliminary numbers, as far as the bonus is concerned, to say if we were already doing it this year, what would it look like? And from the beginning of the year to date, it was, just shy of $8,000 that would be paid out in bonuses from the beginning of the school to now. Right. And then I looked at, okay, if those same people for each sub, how many days they have worked, if they would get the next milestone, which again would be meeting our goal of increased coverage, which is why we wanted to institute that milestone. That was another, I think, just under $3,000, which is still under the cost that we're spending for miscellaneous time. So I'm not saying that we necessarily, put off the table changing that rate. My recommendation would be to implement this bonus structure and continue, because we track on a monthly basis, see what impact that has, and then continue, to have those conversations. We address this group in that way, that we have other groups that we don't do at the same time.
Right. And I was just going to make a reaction to the 850 or 851. It seems like something we need to go on.
Yeah.
It seems very low.
So after listening to Ms. Kerr come in and ask whether we could have a rate of $100, do you recommend a rate of $100?
So as I mentioned, I would.
Besides, as you mentioned, and all the things repeating everything, yes or no, do you have a rate, a recommendation for a
Howard,
rate?
I don't think it's as simple as yes or no. It's yes and.
If we want to address all of the other groups that Sarah mentioned, because we can't treat one group.
Yeah, I started my teaching career as a substitute teacher. It is terrifying to go into a classroom with students that you have no idea about, stand there and expect and actually attempt to teach something is extremely, just like the nerves just stand on end. It is a rough job. And I know it from experience, and I advocate for a good rate of pay for those who have this particular task to do.
Howard, I too spent a better part of the year as a substitute teacher in the greater Decatur area, going all over the place. So I understand. But again, as Sarah pointed out, this isn't a simple yes or no answer to your question, given the other groups that we have to keep in mind.
And I think it was a direct way to say, if we are going to go that route and we all agree that we want to raise it to 100, Howard, it's to say that we're going to have to look at everyone else. And right now with having, let's just say, for instance, the hypothetical idea that, we are going to move forward and do the bonuses. You had at one point, there's like 500 unfilled or 200 unfilled. So you have to look at how that would change things now that people are seeing that, there are going to be additional bonuses, right? And then consider that and consider more factors, which doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just, as a board, do we want to go that route? It is a possibility. It's just looking at it together. I don't know that can happen tonight, but it is a good question to raise.
Okay.
I got a question.
I'm done with my.
No, I understand where your question is.
Mine's even worse, but I don't really expect you to address it as far as this issue or this coming vote. I've never understood, and I'd like you, if you can, to explain to me why there's so much disparity between a substitute teacher that comes in, at what is it, $12 an hour effectively or something to that size, as compared to a teacher that's been here quite some time, I suppose, that's making $100,000 or more. I mean, to me, I've never understood the difference of why there is that much disparity for a 9-month position.
I thought I'd call you and talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's much worse than what you just talked about in the silo and all of the other things, right? But I just want to voice my distress with not understanding that. Because most people, I'm retired, have been for quite some time, and there's a lot of people out there that are retired. The state has changed its rules on who can teach as a sub, right? And a lot of people like myself that might want to come in, but when they look at the tax structure and they look at their Social Security or their pension and so on, there has to be a threshold that's exceeded.
Can I jump in? I just want to say I agree with Howard. I think that Howard, it's a job that needs to be done.
Well, it's information time for us.
Thank you, though, Sarah,
Okay,
for putting
so
this together.
we have a consensus to bring the substitute employee compensation and bonus structure back at the next meeting. It's an action item.
Yes.
And thanks for all that information.
All right, next we have the 2019-2020 position FTE increase request, and this is an informational item.
So just as you have in your board packet, it attaches a list of a summary of positions that are requested for the following year. For consideration, you brought that for approval.
So do we have a consensus on the information we saw earlier to bring back with the FTE?
Yes.
All right,
Thanks, Sarah.
and with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.